Gerard, thanks for sitting down with me today. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Gerard, HZPC is seen as an innovator and a leader in the potato sector right around the globe. Can you talk a little bit about how you decide where to invest R&D dollars, and how do you follow some consumer trends?
Yeah. If you really look at your investment in the R&D, then you have to have a very long-term view, basically, and it makes it difficult, maybe also easy at the other end. But what we really try to do is to follow what are the trends that are going on the consumer. Let's for the fresh market, we're basically looking at consumers and the retailers, and for the industry side, then you follow the quick service restaurants or those type of clients. And in general, there are a few things that you find out. Of course, health is continuously a very important item. Convenience is a very important item. I would add sustainability to that. And then if you take those things in consideration, then you write all kinds of different scenarios. And then you say, okay, we have to work on the different scenarios in that end. And for potatoes, it is not that difficult, I would say, because it's a healthy product anyhow. It's a very sustainable product. I will tell a little bit more about that one. And while we have maybe a little bit of disadvantage is the convenience. It's if you have it as a fresh product, it is not. You have to peel it. You have to work a little bit more for it compared to several other products. But when you look at sustainability, it is the food where you produce with the lowest amount of water, the highest amount of nutrition value. And that's really, in our perception, a very sustainable item which is very important, for instance, in, let's say, Africa, Asia, Middle East areas, and those are really areas with a lot of potatoes. If you look at the convenience, that's probably one of the things where we still have to improve, and that's also where we invest. Can we find anything to do with the potatoes to make it more convenient for the consumer? And we have certain ideas on that. We have asked, we brought a few items on the market. We've patented those ideas, and we are looking at this moment for partners, basically industry partners, because we are in the seed side and we need to have further partners in the chain to work on those ideas. But yes, that's what we're really working on. Excellent. Next to, of course, the total basic genetics that you have to improve to know exactly which genes are where and how can you combine all kinds of genes. But that's, let's say, normal plant breeding stuff.
Right. So, and then on to an easy topic. Let's talk about genetically modified varieties. So we've got some in North America now. Is this something that's on the radar in the pipeline for HFPC? And then what's your take on GM?
Yeah. It's on the radar in the sense that we follow carefully, of course, what's going on. We are careful with GM. At the end, it is the consumer that has to decide whether you go on for GM products. And the discussion in the United States is again a little bit different from the discussion in Europe, because there are techniques that are considered as GM in the States, while they are considered as non-GM, in the United States, which are considered as GM in Europe. So there's why the politicians of the world are confusing our industry. That has to be solved. But at the end, it's the consumer that is deciding whether we have to go for the GM, and you see a huge reluctancy with the consumer. And as long as we do see that reluctancy, we are very careful. So we are not really going for it. We are following what techniques there are, but we think that with the newer techniques, which we hope will not be considered in the world on longer term as GM technologies, can bring us the same advantages than what the GM technology can bring. So I don't. If you really ask me, do you see really GM potatoes broadly spread over the world? As I would say, not the classic GM ones, but in the new those who are bred with new breeding technologies. And whether then certain countries in the world would still consider them as GM is another thing. But yes, the new breeding techniques, I do see a lot of advantages in it.
Excellent. So now I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit, which is always dangerous ground for you CEOs. So if I ask you to speculate a little bit on the potato sector, where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth in the potato sector? Maybe in Europe, but also globally.
Yeah, I think you have to look globally. If you look at the let's say the big markets like the European market, it's things are changing, but the total market is not really growing. If you look at the United States, things are changing a little bit, but it's not really growing. The real acreages for potatoes in the world are in Asia and in Africa. And if you look at the growth, then you see a really spectacular growth of potato growing in Africa, for instance. If you look at FAO statistics and you look at the acreages in a country like Rwanda or Uganda, potato acreages are growing with up to 10% a year. Wow. So those people, they realize more and more what you can do with potatoes. And then you have to realize that potatoes can be grown with low amount of water in those areas. So potatoes can be only need to grow that for 80 days compared to corn where you need, or wheat or whatever other crop you want to compare it with, where you need much more days for it. And next to that, potatoes you can harvest it every day. If you grow it in the garden and you just pick up a few plants every day, then you can feed your family relatively easy with that. So those are clearly advantages of the potatoes, and more people do recognize this. Though it is difficult for seed potato let's say companies to bring those bulk products as potatoes, the seed potatoes, to those areas. That is still a huge item that we have to solve. Currently, as ASAPC, we are introducing our varieties in India. It takes a long time to go through all the bureaucratic areas over there, but we brought our varieties to China, and they are growing. We are in projects involved in Africa. Our varieties are used in the northern part of Africa, above the Sahara, and they are used in the very southern part of Africa, South Africa, and the countries just north of South Africa. But in, let's say, Central Africa, we really would like to expand, and we are working together with some other partners as well to see whether you can distribute fertilizers, the necessary chemicals if necessary, and the seed potatoes basically in one way. If you ask me, is this profitable? No, and this is not going to be very profitable, but this is a vision that we have, that we would like to see that we can serve also the people over there with our varieties, and then in the long term it will be profitable. But we don't have, let's say, we have shareholders, but we don't have short-term thinking shareholders behind ourselves, so we can afford ourselves to do this type of things.
Right. And will better the planet.
Exactly, that's basically what we're going for.
Nice. Gerard, you served a very successful term and are now the outgoing ESA president.
That's correct.
The European Seed Association. If you had to pluck off one thing that you're most proud of in your term as president of ESA, what do you think that one thing would be?
If you say one thing, if you allow me to split it a little bit in two things, is one thing I think is an internal issue of the European Seed Association. It's an association where you have big companies and smaller companies all associated together, and that sometimes you do see discussions where there's a big gap, of course, between the view of the smaller ones and the bigger ones. And I'm pleased, I have to say, that there is a huge interest for all kinds of companies in the European Seed Association. So we succeed in serving, say, the interest of the smaller ones and the bigger ones at the same time. And of course, a lot of things we do have are all in common. The interest of the plant breeding industry, but how we get there, it might be that the bigger company has not a view, especially those who are also connected to the chemical industry, that they have not a view than those who are really, let's say, smaller plant breeding companies. If you look at the subjects, what one is important, there's huge discussion already for years going on the biodiversity and the Nagoya Protocol and all those subjects. As ESA, we've started to say we want to have a voluntary contribution to the international treaty. And I'm not going to in the details what this all means. So we had to go around with the hat and to see whether the companies and the National Seed Associations wants to contribute anything. And we are pleased that we did collect quite what we call substantial amount of money that we will hand over to the Secretariat of the Treaty on Tuesday afternoon of this Congress. And I think that's quite an achievement, because if you really go around and you ask companies and say, pay us, I cannot guarantee what you get, but please pay to do a gesture. For small money this goes, but we really wanted to have what we call substantial money, and we did succeed.
Nice. I think that the impact that ESA is having is being felt even outside of the European Union, outside of the European and Asian. We're seeing a lot of folks coming from around the world to ESA now to better understand and how to do business in Europe. So congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you very much for that.
Thanks for sitting down with me again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.